Knight hired Bloods from 3 feuding factions to answer phones, market his records, and provide security at his office and studio. For some, he bought cars. For others, he paid the rent. Suge's bodyguards were feared by everybody because people knew what they had done in the past, said gang investigator Ladd. They weren't afraid to kill, and they let it be known. Knight said his company offered a second chance to people shunned by society. Many of his employees had never held a job. For the Pyrus and Bloods, death row offered entree into a world of privilege. Chauffeured limousines, chartered planes, backstage passes, escorted girls. Best believe Knight's posse turned heads. For the gang members, death row wasn't just a paycheck. It was a non-stop party where they and their weapons were always welcome. In 1995, authorities began investigating death row records employees with connection with a series of assaults, robberies, and murders. The victims in many cases have had run-ins with Knight. Police suspected that Knight was orchestrating the crimes. Knight denied it, of course. In 1996, the death row empire that Knight created began to crumble. Dre left to launch his own label. Tupac was killed in Las Vegas. With Knight at his side, death row's investors and distributors grew uncomfortable with the publicity. Knight's gang member homies who provided Knight security began fighting among themselves with each other. In the summer of 1996, one of Knight's bodyguards refused to return 2 death row cars. Several other bodyguards tried to abduct and kill the man. Say people with knowledge of the dispute, the bodyguard escaped but was shot in the buttocks. Knight later fired him. Informants say the man vowed revenge. Suge Knight has made a lot of enemies over the years, said Tim Brennan, former Compton gang investigator. Some of the very people who worked for Suge have now turned against him. Police believe the 5 bodyguards who began a campaign of violence against Knight's inner circle and got associates to carry out some shootings and was the getaway driver at least once, gang members and investigators say. After the shooter trapped Goldie at the stoplight in 1997, Knight's enemies lay low for 3 years. On April 4th, 2000, they struck again. Ponytail had an ally from Fruittown, a drug dealer who believed Knight ordered the killing of his homeboy. This was Lil Rod from Fruittown, Pyru. The roots for this inner feud run very deep. An investigator for the sheriff's department. Gang members don't forget a grudge. Word on the street, there's a hit out on Suge Knight. This time they went after Wardell Poochie Faust, his homeboy, a Knight associate, and Faust's friend William Chin Walker were sitting in a van on a dead-end street in Compton. Just after midnight, the 2 men rushed up, opened fire, and fled. Walker, 37, died an hour later. The homeboy Chin. Poochie, 40, was severely injured, shot several times, but he survived. George and Poochie were homeboys. He thought Poochie had turned against him. He obviously thought Poochie and Chin were waiting for one of the drug dealers that they were waiting at the spot to jack him, but they had some other plans and bum rushed him. Shot them all up, shot the core up, but they were waiting in. Then 3 weeks later, the body of Vince B. Buchanan, 35, a drug dealer and gang member, was found near a Compton graveyard with a gunshot wound to the back of his head. Buchanan's killers had abducted him, cuffed his hands behind his back, then brutalized him and videotaped his execution, and tortured his ass. Informants have told police Buchanan had been friendly with the disgruntled death row employer, bodyguard G, the drug dealer aligned against Knight. Lil Rod. A former suspected Knight orchestrated the slaying. The two men allegedly set out to retaliate. Soldiers found one of their targets was Alton Buntry McDonald, Knight's best friend. McDonald and a buddy, Dave Dudley, were rumored to have played a videotape of Buchanan execution for friends at McDonald's Compton home. On March 25th, 2001, Dudley was shot and killed, and his girlfriend was shot and had her arm amputated right in front of Buntry's home. Knight said he had no role in Buchanan's murder. This feud they say is going on, had nothing to do with me. I was in prison, said Suge. In 1997, a judge had sentenced him to 9 years in prison for violating his terms of his probation for kicking Orlando Anderson in the head right before they got shot up in Las Vegas, Nevada, 1996. With credit for good behavior, Knight was released from prison in August 2001. His world had been shaken, but he felt secure with Buntry at his side, now Knight's chief bodyguard. But 8 months later, Buntry was taken out. It happened at a gas station on April 3rd, 2002. Buntry, 37, pulled in around at 2:30 p.m. with Officer Reggie Rice Sr. He paid the attendant and was about to start pumping. Actually, it was Senior who paid the attendant. As Buntry was pumping gas, two men walked up, one on a bike, and started AKing Buntry down. He was shot 9 times exactly. The assailants fled in a pickup truck, they say, but one fled on a bike. One had a ponytail. You obviously know who the fuck it was. No one has still been arrested in Buntry's death. We think the same suspects who killed Alton McDonald were involved in the murder of David Dudley the year before, as well as the shooting of William Walker and Wardell Faust a year before. That, says Sheriff's Homicide Detective Beth Smith. There are very unique identifiers that link these 3 cases together. Then, on October 16th, Henry Hendog Smith, another close friend of Knight's, was shot to death in South Central. Smith, 33, had been a fixture at Death Row and designed the label's logo. He was sitting in a burgundy Jeep near a fried chicken stand in South Central while his girlfriend used a payphone. A young man leaned into the truck and fired 6 shots at Smith. The attacker, fleeing on a bicycle, dropped his pistol. Witnesses said he bent over to pick up the gun and calmly resumed pedaling. On July 24th, unknown assailants again tried to kill Poochie, but this time they succeeded. Faust was riding a motorcycle in the early evening when a car rushed up behind him. Faust was riddled with gunfire. At 2:30 a.m. on May 27th, armed assailants staged a drive-by attack on Death Row headquarters, tearing holes in the stucco and shattering windows. Knight professes not to be concerned. A few years later, Lil Rod and George G. Ponytail Williams were arrested in Palmdale, California for manufacturing and selling water, PC